This is a different gun.
Sirhan, remember your training.
You can turn back now, or learn the stuff they don't want you to know. Here are the facts. In the film The Manchurian Candidate, shadowy communist forces use brainwashing, hypnosis, and drugs to turn an ordinary US soldier into an unwitting assassin. This soldier has no knowledge of his experiences. Instead, his programming is triggered by seeing a Queen of Hearts playing card. After he carries out his specified task, he forgets the entire sequence. It's a frightening proposition, and it makes for hair-raising fiction. But could it happen in real life? Several intelligence agencies actually did try to create unwilling sleeper agents, and they weren't all communist. In fact, one of them was the CIA. Here's where it gets crazy. During the 1950s, the CIA ran a top-secret operation codenamed Project Artichoke. According to a CIA memo from 1975, Artichoke is a code name for the study and use of special interrogation methods and techniques. These methods include the use of hypnosis, drugs such as morphine or sodium pentothal, and psychological torture techniques such as total isolation. Project Artichoke arose from Project Bluebird and eventually transformed into the more well-known Project MKUltra. Over the course of this project's lifetime, it addressed several disturbing questions, such as, can an individual be made to perform an act of attempted assassination involuntarily under the influence of artichoke? To answer this question, the CIA contemplated several tactics that, were they common knowledge, would have generated an enormous uproar and outrage from the American public. To this day, the details of this murky operation are largely unknown. There is evidence that the CIA used LSD on interrogation subjects and also conducted numerous interrogations and experiments with other drugs, searching for a combination of techniques and substances that could produce extraordinarily compliant, suggestible individuals. According to the current historical record, these experiments were largely unsuccessful and at times disastrous. There was also at least one documented death linked to this series of programs. About a week after a CIA representative gave Army civilian Frank Olson a dose of LSD, Olson died, crashing through a window and plummeting to the ground. The death was ruled a suicide. But how close did the CIA come to creating an unwitting assassin? The most disturbing piece of evidence comes from a 1954 memo, wherein the Artichoke team describes and analyzes a plan to drug a well-connected foreign national, brainwash the subject, and return them to their normal surroundings with no knowledge of the event. The goal was to make this subject an involuntary assassin. Once triggered by a certain symbol, phrase, or other stimulus, the subject would attempt to kill his or her designated target. In other words, to create a real-life Manchurian candidate. The memo states that this is a hypothetical problem and also concludes that the operation would be incredibly difficult, if not impossible. There would be very little time to imprint the programming. The agency would have almost no physical control of the subject, and the access to the subject would have to take place in a social situation with non-CIA company. Additionally, the Artichoke team realized that any news of the operation could ruin further missions. This evidence only proves that the agency contemplated these types of operations, but the lack of further detail leads many investigators to suppose the field operations may have been more extensive than the CIA would have the public believe. After looking through the heavily redacted files and searching for masses of missing data, we only know one thing for sure. There's still something they don't want you to know about Project Artichoke. Stay tuned to learn more about the aftermath of Project Artichoke and MKUltra. Here are the facts. In last week's episode, we investigated Projects Artichoke and MKUltra, secret CIA programs that used drugs and psychological manipulation to conduct unsavory experiments on US citizens and possibly foreign nationals. Most conspiracy theorists have heard of MKUltra. Today it's often cited in pop culture, such as movies and video games. But what if MKUltra isn't the worst of the bunch? Some, and not all of them conspiracy theorists, believe the American public has has been the victim of a massive bait and switch, that Project Artichoke was more than a few weird psychological studies, and that it was much, much worse than Project MKUltra. Here's where it gets crazy. Enter Operation Dormouse. In a terrible mistake, the murder of Frank Olson and the CIA's secret Cold War experiments, journalist H.P. Albarelli Jr. argues that the CIA and the Ford administration purposefully leaked information about MKUltra. Albarelli argues that beginning in 1975, the government attempted to divert attention from Artichoke. But why? Albarelli believes that Artichoke encompassed some of the CIA's most reprehensible secrets they would kill to keep. This was hardly out of the ordinary. Albarelli argues that the CIA had already murdered scientists at the dawn of the Artichoke program. For example, the reported suicide of Frank Olson, who allegedly jumped from a window after being earlier dosed with LSD, was a thinly veiled murder. If all this is true, then what exactly happened during Project Artichoke? Albarelli presents Artichoke as the operational side of the mind control experiments studied in MKUltra. MKUltra was associated with prestigious colleges, research labs, and prominent professors, providing a measure of credibility and indemnity. However, Project Artichoke may have authorized numerous clandestine, highly illegal operations on unwitting foreign nationals and U.S. citizens. These experiments allegedly included non-consensual drug dosing, brainwashing techniques, and long-term attempts to create unwilling assassins. According to Albarelli, by the mid-1970s, the CIA knew the public was out for blood. The 1975 Rockefeller Commission report and congressional hearings headed by Senators Frank Church and Teddy Kennedy triggered high-level meetings between the Ford administration and the CIA's general counsel. The CIA allegedly believed that revealing carefully selected information about MKUltra would take the heat off Artichoke. Some of America's most influential political players have been accused of participating in the cover-up, including Dick Cheney and Donald Rumsfeld. During these meetings, the CIA allegedly informed the White House that they'd made a secret pact with the Department of Justice in 1954, essentially guaranteeing that they would not prosecute CIA operatives for criminal activities. If this was true, the implications were explosive. But those weren't the only skeletons in the closet. Olson was allegedly murdered because he had told people about a pre-Artichoke experiment in France, where operatives dosed the entire town of Pont Saint-Esprit with drugs. Currently, the U.S. government has not confirmed any of these allegations. But if Albarelli is correct, then what exactly were the Ford administration and the CIA trying to hide? The publicly available information on Project Artichoke and MKUltra is disturbing enough, yet it appears there may be even more stuff they don't want you to know.
Not only Senator Kennedy. Oh my God! Kennedy has been shot.